You all right down there? Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to call the meeting back to order again, please. And before I go to the table here, I would like to offer anybody else an opportunity to speak. Mr. Kosteroff.
Ed Kosteroff, 23215 West River Road. As you make this decision, I would like you to take into consideration that we are changing, you are changing, an R1A district to an R1E. The 6 of us who signed that letter, who are opposed to it, have been living here for a long time, paying our taxes, living next to a golf course, accepting the golf course, accepting the noise that accompanies a golf course. The tournaments, the wedding receptions on Saturdays and whenever. We bought our houses when that was there. We did not buy our house to have a rowing club near us. We thought we bought in a residential neighborhood with a golf course. And now you want to add a rowing club and all the noise that goes with it. We've heard from a number of people that our kids are quiet, our kids are whatever. Kids are kids. They unlock their cars, they knock their tweeters, their alarms go off, they talk, they run, they play their music. They're kids. And there's going to be noise that you're subjecting the neighbors to in my neighborhood, and it's not at 4 a.m. unless I'm mistaken, Scott. It's usually about 5:30, correct? Nothing starts at 4 that I know of. But 5:30, it does start. And it will be noisy. It will be additional noise and additional commotion in our residential neighborhood. I'm asking you, do you want that noise in your neighborhood? Can I come to your neighborhood and play this noise in front of your house at 5:30 in the morning if I record it at the same decibel level? Is that acceptable? I don't know, Chief, is that acceptable? Can that be done? Or do I get a ticket for doing it? I don't know. But I do know this, that it has been a residential neighborhood, and it should stay a residential neighborhood. We have not denied, and we will not deny, one child the ability to row by not approving this club at this location. If we can find a location that isn't in a residential neighborhood, I'm all for it, but not in a residential neighborhood. Thank you for your time, for your understanding of this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Kosteroff. Okay, at this point, then I will bring it back to the table, and I would like to entertain any final questions or comments regarding the special land use portion of this application. And then we'll see what direction it goes. Jay, I'm going to start with you.
Good, I'm going to start with a question.
Fine.
This is for Brian or for you. What is it exactly, if we can revisit that? I think you covered it a little bit at the beginning. What is it that we're being asked to opine on today?
We are being asked to approve or deny the recommendation of the Township Board specifically regarding the special land use. Not the site plan, only the special land use.
Okay, and so in that case, what we are approving is that it is an acceptable use within that district,
Okay.
on that location, that there is a rowing club, subject to the limitations that they've presented to us, although we don't have those necessarily in the form of a motion with all the limits and all that sort of thing. Am I understanding that correctly?
What your understanding is that the 6 criteria, I believe it's 6, that are in the special land use standard, or is it 5? Okay. Are what we are evaluating. And Brian, would you run through that, please? What are the 5 or 6 specific criteria that we are judging this application on? Let's make sure everybody's clear on that.
Thank you.
I still have no mic, so I apologize. But yes, you are essentially being asked to make a recommendation to the board based upon the standards of Section 22.3 of the zoning ordinance, which relate to 1, compatibility with the master plan, 2, compatibility with adjacent uses, 3, impacts on traffic, 4, impacts on the environment, 5, compliance with the zoning ordinance, which is essentially becomes a site plan review type of standard, and 6, any impact and/or potential concerns about capacity of public services, be it infrastructure, be it safety.
Those are the criteria that this commission uses to judge whether in fact a special land use is or is not acceptable to the planning commission. And the factors that you've been hearing tonight and in the previous public hearing and in other sessions when we've had this application in front of us all touch on one or more of those factors that Brian just listed. So therein lies where the judgment is made.
Okay, so let me explore this a little further. I apologize, it's not a simple
No, that's
answer.
fine. Proceed.
So the things like the use of the safety equipment that has been represented to us and demonstrated for us, which very helpfully. How do we capture all of the various, because that's only one of the various things that have been represented to us in the course of this application, in the course of a couple of evenings of meetings. How do we capture all of those representations into our approval? Because, these are all things that are relevant to the decision-making on whether or not I would say yes or no, is whether or not we have the ability to hold them to all the representations that they've made.
Mr. Chair, I'll jump in if you don't mind.
Please. Why don't you come on up to the podium, and that way everybody can hear you.
Sure.
Let's do that.
Just in case. Let's see if this one works.
Yes.
Business. Essentially, just to get to Commissioner Ferrucci's question, everything that has been submitted as part of this request is essentially what you are acting upon. So be it the safety plan, be it the initial discussion about how and when the boat club would be used, all the way through, up to and through site plan details. So in essence, everything is part of their request. If we should find at some point in the future, if this is approved, not only at this level, but if it's approved by the township board, ultimately, if we find that they are in violation or they are not living up to the standards that they presented to you, then we can cite them with the violation of essentially of their special use approval or their special use permit, as it's commonly referred. So in essence, if this is approved, they would have to live up to everything they've presented to you.
In perpetuity.
Yes, unless and until use changes or they come back with an amendment to their special land use request.
Okay, all right. Then I think I hear very well the
Brian, why don't you just stay there?
the comments by all of the Kostaroffs, but not just by them, the others that signed the letters that were presented to us. It's always the question that's in my mind, and I think others here on the commission, what if this was, next door or 2 doors down, or even 3, 4, 5, doors down? Because anything like this, of this size, is going to change the nature of a neighborhood. I think Mr. Farrell made an excellent point as well, that it's not the only large structure in the neighborhood, so there's a little bit of a mitigating factor there. Having said all of that, I think the work that's been done by the group and by and the flexibility they've shown has convinced me that it's worthy of a special land use. I think my concerns that remain still, however, are in regard to the things that are not on the table here, which are the site plan approval, which would be the next phase of the process. So. So not opining on that at this point, I am in favor of the special land use approval, subject to all of the things that we've covered and been represented to us.
Thank you, Jay.
Mr. Chair, if I could,
Yes,
just real
sir.
quick, just to kind of close off of Jay's comments, I think, and again, this is for all the commission's consideration, and this is depending upon the direction you decide to go, but I would suggest that if your recommendation is favorable, that you include a condition that the applicant must also obtain site plan review and approval of the project as well. Therefore, they're essentially tied together, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that is.
Thank you, Jay. Ann?
Well, at this point, I will pass to someone else's opinion and go back to me?
Come back to you?
Yes?
Okay. Jim?
I really don't have anything further at this point in time.
Thank you. Brian?
As mentioned before, I don't have any safety concerns. I think that's been, well taken care of and mitigated. I'll just add to the point that I do travel that way in the afternoon period between 3 and 5 o'clock, even 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock a lot of times on the way home. Prefer to take that route because it's a more pleasurable ride. I very rarely actually have any other cars like in my sight distance in front of me or behind me. So again, I don't think that there'll be that much of a traffic issue. Number two, about the architecture and the size, I'd argue that it's not any bigger than a school. We have many schools within our communities, and those schools don't actually even come before the Planning Commission about zoning issues. And Park Lane Elementary, it had a similar design to the way this was first brought to us, had the metal roof and stuff. So I can see how these type of buildings are complementary to the surrounding land use. The only thing I kind of have a question on, and this is more so to appease people that I have talked to in passing, is about the sustainability of the rowing program. There were some concerns about that there's significant construction costs, and how would those be taken care of if for some reason the rowing program would cease to exist? Is there any possible way that the township or the township schools would be on the hook for paying for that?
Okay, please. Eric?
No.
Great.
Is that it, Brian?
That's it.
Thank you, sir. Eric?
No, I think so far you've done a good job from an architectural standpoint. I think you still have a little ways to go with completing the color scheme and the roof. My biggest concern is, just impact to the neighbors. So I think continued aesthetic work on the building, as well as the topography and then the buffering that we have in this plan, as well as the layout of the building. I recognize that there are certainly noise concerns, and I think that's my biggest impact. But I think that, like I said, the topography of the area, the landscaping, and the layout of the building, as well as just the size of this entire site and distance to the neighbors is a mitigating factor.
Thank you, Eric. Steve?
Well, I do want to thank everybody for their input tonight and their comments for or against this project. Definitely your voices are heard. I know sometimes in the public we may not feel that we're heard, but your opinions are definitely heard for myself. Keeping in the context of what we're being asked to look at, the special land use and those 6 points, again, the scope of what we're looking at, and still a lot more scope to be discussed in the future. So I think that's important to remember. Nothing really resonates with me. I'm okay with most of it, except for item number 4, the impact on the environment. I do see a note that is underlined in this document before us, that the grading and drainage requirements of the township engineer. I don't recall what those exact requirements were, if this plan has addressed it yet, so it's tough for me to give an opinion on the special land use when that's one of those requirements. So I don't know, do we have the actual results of that?
If I may, Mr. Chair, that's a site plan element. Ultimately, the grading and drainage will have to be approved by the township engineer as part of an approved site plan. If it is not, the project does not move forward at that point.
So to your point earlier, the points of the special land use, what do they all encompass? Which points for tonight?
The special land use considerations, what I put forth for your consideration is a complete special use and site plan review. That's why that's referenced under that standard.
Okay.
But we do not have a full engineering review yet because we're not at the point of full site plan review before the commission.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Mickey?
I don't even know if you're able to answer this, but the one thing I was wondering is if this whole deal goes away a few years down the road, it doesn't work out, and they go to lease that building or to sell it to somebody else, is there some way we could put some kind of restriction on it so that, from what I understand, this is the only time we'll get out in front of this property, and maybe I'm wrong, but if it is, then, what could the building be used for 10 years from now if they sell it? Is there,
The building could be used for any permissible purpose in the residential zoning district. So in essence, if it's a use that's permitted by right, they could be used for such. If it's a special land use, a new owner, a new petitioner would have to come before you and seek a new special land use approval. Let me maybe take a step back, Mr. Chair, because I heard a statement earlier, and I read it in one of the letters, maybe clear up a misnomer. The site
Please do.
is zoned R1E. It is not being rezoned as part of this process. By virtue of the lot split over a year ago, the site became zoned R1E. R1E is simply an overlay district amongst your residential, your R1A and R1B zoning districts. It does not affect the host of uses that are permitted. Whether this was R1A, R1B, or R1E, the host of uses are entirely the same, be they permitted by right or be they special land uses. The changes under R1E relate to the max or the required lot width and the required lot area. Those are the only distinctions. So in essence, this site, again, I'll go back to what I said, any of the uses listed in R1A, R1B, R1E would be allowable at this site at this time or in the future, be it as a boat club, which is a special land use, be it the boat club goes away, somebody buys it and wants to build a house there. All of those things would be in play.
but it has to be on the list. If it's something else or something not on the list, then
Correct.
they'd have to come
There,
forward.
I am, other than the recreational and the institutional types of uses that are listed as special land uses, I'm unaware of any commercial land uses that are allowable in your single-family districts.
Okay, great.
So that is not a concern. That's not something to be concerned with, I should say.
Now, Brian, just if I could elaborate, or ask Brian to elaborate, there are certain uses that are allowed by right within
Correct.
the R1A, B, and E, and others that are special land use.
That's
The ones
correct.
by right are primarily schools and churches?
Essentially, single-family residences
Oh.
are permitted by right. Churches would be a special land use.
okay.
Golf courses are special land uses. Marinas, boat clubs, et cetera, those are special land uses.
Okay.
Thank you. That does answer my question.
Okay. Cheryl?
I guess I just have a couple of comments and maybe one question that actually hasn't been addressed by anyone. First off, I do know that a rowing club is clearly in the master plan for the island, and so to that extent, I'm comfortable with that. But the one open question that nobody has discussed is if, in fact, this would have any sort of negative impact on property values in the area. Nobody has raised it as an issue, so I'm assuming it's not one. Just want to make sure we're all clear on whether or not it is one.
Mr. Chair, there's no definitive answer for that. That's something that is often cited, almost never proven. So I can't give you a definitive, you'd have to do an entire market study of the neighborhood, of property values, of the potential impact. It's just not something that's done. Again, usually that is something that is thrown out as a general objection without any evidence behind it whatsoever. So.
And it hasn't been thrown out as a
Correct.
general objection. So I'm
Correct.
assuming there is no objection based on that. I just wanted to voice that.
Not that I've heard.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Coming back to Ann.
When we set up the master plan, we had ideas for recreational facilities, and a lot of those need to appear in our residential areas. And the reason for that is that the entire island is surrounded by private property. So there are certain recreational uses, and this being one type, that is acceptable in those areas, provided that the site plan and the structure itself is compatible with the neighborhood. Compatible being color effective and not standing out. So it's my thought that the special land use in this case is a reasonable request. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. From my perspective, the process that we've gone through has been a good one. We've received a lot of public input, and I want everybody to know that that input has been heard and answers have been provided, okay? And they've all basically centered around compatibility with the neighborhoods. And just I have a list of here of things that we've heard and kind of what the answers were. There were concerns about ties to the Grosse Ile school system, be there liability issues, insurance issues, financial issues, if there was a default on payments. The fact is that as a result of this, we determined that there are no ties that would limit or otherwise inhibit Grosse Ile schools from effectively using the facility. Road crossing. We've talked about that a lot, okay, and I, for one, am convinced at this point that what we have is in a process with the training, with the equipment, with the concept, with the field validation, that we have a safe situation there. It can be managed and will be managed. Noise on the river was certainly a concern that we heard because these folks will be out there in the early morning. Okay, to my thinking, that issue, while there will be noise, it's something that, to my thinking, is minimal. And we really, when you contrast it against a powerboat going by, it doesn't seem like it would be that particularly obtrusive. Parking, we heard that there was inadequate parking. With the relationship that the rowing club has got with the golf course, to be able to use the overflow capability of the many empty spots that they've got there, that to me is not an issue. That's compatibility related. Speeding. We heard that with the students coming in, potentially that there would be a concern that they would be driving too fast either to get to the facility or driving too fast to get from the facility to the school. That's always a possibility. However, what we heard from our chief is that the police are very good at reacting to where the problems are. And if there's a problem there, it'll be addressed. Okay, so again, not an issue for me. The building design. Building design to me is a big one, and big steps have been taken to make this more compatible. Have we gone quite as far as we need to go? I don't think so. I think there's more tweaking that can be done in light of the way the Planning Commission has made suggestions, and I would hope that between now and the site plan that just a bit more tweaking could be done to mitigate concerns. We heard that one of the ways in which the athletes train is by road running, and that this would be a factor if again, it's early in the morning and they don't row and they decide to go run on the road and it's dark. Well, what we found was that running is not part of this program. That in fact, with the equipment that's being installed, it will be internal, and they'll be using rowing equipment as part of their program. So again, it's not an issue. Lights and the way the building is being lighted and the light problems that would cause, contamination basically of the neighborhood at night. I think that this represents potentially improvement, given the fact that right now on the site is a bare street light, which is illuminating all that property, and that street light is going to be gone, and it's going to be replaced by downward lighting. So I don't see that as an issue. Noise. Okay, noise of the kids. Yes, there definitely will be noise. There's no doubt about it. And even the best of intentioned people, coaches and this sort of thing, while they will manage it, the fact is the kids will be kids. Okay, so how has this been mitigated? It's been mitigated by the design. There's heavy shielding on the north side. I'm sorry, the south side, where the nearest neighbor is at. The parking lot and this sort of and the area where the people will be congregating before going into the building will be on the south side, on the north side of that building, and the building lies between them and the neighborhood to the north. And as far as the neighbors concerned from the south, that's a long way away. It's across the entire parking lot to the entire south end of West Shore. Or north end of West Shore. I'm sorry, I'm getting these directions reversed. But the point here is that it was not the building position and the way the kids will be accessing it and the way it's been screened, to me, takes an issue which certainly will be there and makes it compatible. ultimately, you ask yourself, this is an R1A residential district, and you hear all these issues that are out there, and you have to ask yourself, if you take them in total, does it rise to the level where it would be, in fact, incompatible with the neighborhood? And when I put all these things together and I look at the responses that have been given, my answer is no, it does not rise to that level. Yes, it will be different. Absolutely, it will be different. But will it be different to the extent that this application should be denied by the Planning Commission? I think not. And so, on that basis, I support it. So, I would like to entertain any further discussion. Otherwise, I would call for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I think it just would be important to clarify what the total process is, right? So if this is approved tonight, then what the next couple of steps are.
Well, I can answer that. The next step, if the Planning Commission approves this request, there will be findings of fact that is prepared by Brian, summarizing the application and all the issues that would come to the board. And then you at the board level would be processing this to make the final decision on the special land use. From that point, assuming that you approved it, it would come back to us, and we would go through the detail of everything related to the site plan. So, at a minimum, there would be one more trip back to the Planning Commission, and certainly one more trip to the board. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I knew the process. I just wanted to make sure that everyone else understood the process.
I could tell when you were looking at me, you're saying, why am I telling you this? You weren't very subtle down there. Okay. Any additional questions or comments? If not, I would entertain a motion.
Excuse me. Motion to recommend to the Township Board conditional approval of the special land use based on the approval of a forthcoming site plan and any conditions put on that.
Okay, we have a motion from Brian. Is there support?
Second.
We have a support from Jay. Is there discussion? Brian, is that motion adequate in concept? Or is there more detail that ought to be augmented to it?
Just ask if the motion maker and the support would be open to it, just simply citing or referencing compliance with the review standards of Section 22.3 of the Township Zoning Ordinance.
Sure, no problem with it.
Absolutely not.
Okay, so we have additional discussion around this motion. Any additional discussion? Okay, I'm going to call the question. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much. Your next appearance will be in front of the Township Board. Brian, you will need to prepare the findings of fact. And to everybody who provided us comments, both positive or negative, on this application, we thank you. Your input has helped us to develop a better project for the community, and that's why we're here. Thank you.
Yeah, Jim, we asked a question.
Yes, sir.
Do we know when this will be prepared and presented to the next time?
Brian, Eric, can you help on that?
Yeah, so the next Township Board meeting is actually next Monday, but it's study session, so this would not be done for that study session. So then the next opportunity would be the second Monday of the month, September. So that would be the 9th, I believe.
And assuming that meeting, we pass that and we come back to you, when will be the next board meeting after that?
Planning Commission meeting, we have not established yet, but I suspect it will be reasonably promptly. Let me just say that. Probably the first Monday in October or something like that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Folks, we're still in session here, so I'd appreciate it, please, if you could take your discussion outside. We're moving now to the next item, which is a lot split reconfiguration. The applicant is Mrs. Gladys Butcher of 21538 Colonial Court, Groseal. The location is West Crawford Subdivisions, Lot 2 and 3. The common description is 21538 Colonial Court, and the adjacent property 21558 Colonial Court. Colonial Court is located off of Church between West River and Meridian on the south side of Church. The proposal is to split 0.26 acres off the back of 21538 Colonial Court and consolidate it with the property at 21558 to the south. No new lots are created. This portion of the property is in the rear and does not affect street frontage. You can think of it as basically it's an L-shaped property, and the back part of the L is being sliced off and sold to the parcel adjacent. Both of these will conform to the R1B zoning standard of greater than 16,000 square feet. Zoning is R1B. Applicable ordinances are Article 3, single-family residential standards, and Article 19, general provisions, specifically 19.21, which is entitled Lot Splits and Consolidations. The process is straightforward. The Planning Commission reviews the application, makes a recommendation. It goes to the Township Board, and they make the final decision. We are at the step one tonight, the review and recommendation, and I do expect the Planning Commission will vote on this tonight. Welcome.
Thank you.
I know that you are very much interested in the application being moved through the Planning Commission. And
Yes, I am.
Brian here will talk in a minute about all the technical details that we have to be concerned with.
Okay.
So I won't burden you with that.
Thank you.
If you just got any passing comments you'd like to make to us, we would welcome them.
I would appreciate your consideration of this. It would be a great help to me. My neighbor, Carol Brick, for several years has shown interest in purchasing this piece of property. Then when my husband passed away 2 years ago, she again, mentioned it, asked if I would sell it to her, and she will do nothing but make it better, and she loves the property around there. We've enjoyed it for many years, and I'd respectfully request your consideration on this. It would be a great help to me.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank
You
you.
can just have a seat if you like. And
Thank
Brian,
you.
would you come up, please, and show us the drawings?
I'll certainly try. All right. I will try to keep this brief, Mr. Chair. You've given a fine overview. The request before you is a lot reconfiguration, is usually how we refer to it. It's a simultaneous split and combination whereby no new buildable sites are created. You can see on the screen, this is essentially the subject site, parcel A, 21538. And then the adjoining property, parcel B, 21558. There is a piece of land, in essence, as was referenced. The petitioner's site is an L-shaped lot, and in fact, actually, both sites are essentially L-shaped lots, so they're semi-irregular in shape. And the request before you would basically cut or split a 0.28 acre piece off of parcel A and then combine it with parcel B. Better look, these are the existing properties. So you have in blue, you have the petitioner's site, and then in sort of the, it looks more purple, but whatever we want to call that. I'm not going to, we'll go with magenta. I like that. Is that a real color? Is the neighboring property. So there's the existing. You can see essentially two inverted L's, for lack of a better description. As proposed, the piece right here, I'm going to keep the cursor in the same spot, right here, would be split from parcel A combined with parcel B being the neighbor's property. Quick summary, as is already outlined in my review letter. Procedurally, this is in front of you for a recommendation to the Township Board as a proposed lot reconfiguration. Both resulting parcels do exceed the R1B dimensional standards. The R1E overlay has no effect. In essence, it does not apply to this request because we do not have a new buildable site. Both properties are already developed, as you see in the survey drawing and as I showed in the aerial photo. However, if they were to be redeveloped in the future, they still, again, exceed minimum dimensional areas and provide suitable building envelopes should somebody purchase, demolish, and rebuild. No impact on width or street frontage. Ultimately, I think you'll agree the execution of the proposal will result in more regularly shaped lots, this as opposed to this. In terms of utilities, easements, special assessments, no impact whatsoever. And in essence, or I guess in closing, there is no impact under the State Land Division Act. Neither of these parcels has been split, divided, or otherwise changed in the past 10 years. So the Land Division Act has no effect on the recombination at this time, or the reconfiguration, excuse me, at this time.
Okay, since there's no one in the audience, I'll bring it back to the table, see if there are any questions. Mickey, we'll start with you. Any questions about this?
I don't have any questions. Looks like it's all in order.
Okay, Cheryl?
I have no questions.
Steve?
No questions?
Jay?
None.
Ann? No. Jim?
No questions.
Brian?
None, it's straightforward.
Entertain a motion, please, regarding lot split number 380. Lot split and reconfiguration.
I move for the approval of the lot reconfiguration request as presented.
Second.
We have a motion from Jay, support from Brian. Call the question. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. This will now go to the Township Board, presumably at their next meeting, and then you'll be able to move forward. You're welcome.
Really appreciate it.
Sorry to wait through all this.
Yeah, sorry, it was a long wait.
It was like a lesson in government.
Okay, let's move to the Chair's report. The Chair's report, I was not going to actually ask you to vote on this tonight, but it's such a straightforward request, and since the application for the physician's location was pulled, I'm going to ask you to consider this tonight. Basically, at the request of staff, the Planning Commission has been asked to make a recommendation to the Township Board regarding a change to the municipal code. The municipal code is not the zoning ordinance. The municipal code is what the Township Board uses, okay? We do not hold a public hearing on it. We are simply a recommending body, and they will, in fact, execute whatever public hearing requirement there is. Specifically, what they're talking about is Section 103.6 regarding fences. There are no ordinance requirements for the Planning Commission to act on this, but the board wants our advice anyway. And so I think we can render it very simply. Bottom line on this is where posts are located on fences on property relative to the outside boundary of the property. Staff has had a difficult issue with a resident and wants this ordinance to be crystal clear. Brian, you want to supplement this?
I don't have much more to say. The way it's currently written, to be honest, in almost 10 years, this has never been an issue until this year. And your ordinance has sort of a quirky regulation that ties the finished side of a fence to the street address numbering system. It's a bit unusual. We've never had anyone try to take advantage of that, so to speak. In essence, it's been common practice that the finished side of a fence faces outward. That's sort of been everybody's understanding and impression. And again, in the better part of 10 years, we've never had an issue with this until recently. We did have an applicant in to install a fence, and they cited this section of the ordinance such that they could attempt to put the finished side of the fence facing inwards, so they didn't have to look at their own posts. This was, again, sort of caught us a bit off guard. It was not something that we'd ever seen before. In speaking with Dale Ream, the township manager, as well as Lori and Tony Gray, the zoning ordinance enforcement officer, we just took a quick look at the ordinance, threw together a very quick relatively no-brainer amendment to eliminate that process altogether and to try to more clearly and more simply, just state that the finished side of a fence essentially faces outwards. I'm reading through, I apologize that you did not have the draft in your packet. I think we could probably tweak this a little bit. I feel as though I left out a and I'm not sure if the last phrase there, faces all neighboring properties, is exactly the way I want it to read, but nonetheless, I think you get the gist of it.
I think the intent is clear for what you're attempting to accomplish.
Correct, and I can wordsmith this such that it's again, such that it's clean language. But the idea was we wanted a simple approach to better address how fences have historically been installed in the township, such that we don't encounter another similar situation.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for Brian about this? Jay?
Yeah. Looking at A and then B, B kind of leaves it open as to what happens if you've got people who agree to put up a common fence. Does it make sense to add a sentence that says, in the case of a shared fence on the lot line, that they shall agree, or is that unnecessary?
I don't know that it's necessary, quite frankly. If they've already if they've agreed to terms to install a common fence, they're going to have to decide which side the posts go on. There have to be posts, so it's got to go on one side or the other.
Right. It just says that they'll be placed on the inside of the property. Whose? Common sense tells you.
I would leave that up
common
to
sense
the
tells you
two
it always
parties
goes
who
on
are
the
agreeing
inside,
to
right?
install the common fence. That would be my de facto response.
Okay. And I can't imagine how that would be a problem. Right.
It'd have to be like an inline fence with posts or not.
They put fencing on both sides.
We'll
of the
put
post.
posts on both sides. That way, nobody gets the benefit.
I agree, because you know what, if it doesn't work right on the face of the language, you're going to get somebody that comes back later. So basically to say that it goes by however it's submitted by the parties. I mean, I would agree with you that you should add a note in here.
Yeah, why leave it open? You can just say something about in the case of a shared fence line, the party should agree.
Any other builds on this?
I have a question. Is it,
Yes.
are homeowners required, because I don't see it stated here, to actually get a survey to see where the exact lot line is, or can they just throw a fence up?
I don't know.
I got to be honest, I don't either. I don't know that generally speaking, some form of a boundary document has to be provided with the application form. Whether or not you have to formally have your entire parcel surveyed again is, I don't believe we usually require that.
I don't believe
If
we
we
have
have,
to.
if we have a survey or a drawing that shows the setbacks, that's what we need to see. And anytime they do submit that, I have Tony take a look at it.
Yeah.
To look at the drawing, make sure it is accurate. I mean, we can't 100% say, yes, it's definitely 6 foot off, but we do go out there and take a look.
Might make a difference in the kind of fence it is. Might make a difference in the kind of fence it is. For example, the fence on my property has been there forever, and it's a wire fence or whatever, cyclone fence. And the posts happen to be on my side, but that was there before I moved in. Then I see on South Point a case where they have enclosed a children's play area, and it's a wooden fence, and all the posts are on the inside of the fence. That's the only, I don't know why we're even making it.
Because that's not what it says right now. It essentially says that you could put the unfinished side of a fence facing towards your neighbor's property, which is what, again, historically, that's not occurred. And I just think that, at least in my discussions with administration and staff.
So that's what it's really.
Correct. And again, pending input from the commission, common sense kind of dictates it's not the right thing to do.
Yeah. Well, it would make quite a difference.
The ordinance doesn't necessarily say that, though.
Okay, additional comments? Any other questions or comments? Hearing done, I entertain a motion regarding a recommendation of Township Board for this municipal code change as revised. Is there a motion?
Yeah, I move that we recommend that the Township Board move forward with this amendment with language similar to what's been presented to us, with the consideration for some additional language about clarifying shared fence lines, shared applications.
That's a motion. Is there support?
Support.
Support from Eric. Call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's covered. Thank you for taking care of that tonight, folks. It's been hanging out there for a while, and I'm glad we could get through it. Okay, next meeting date. Again, we're kind of scheduling around, unless something else has come in, we're scheduling around the rowing club. And given that they'll be on the on the agenda on the 9th. That gives us an option, September 9th, I think is what was said. We could either go the last Monday in September, which would be the 30th, or the first Monday in October, October 7th. Is there any preference among members? Why don't we go the 7th of October then? October 7th. Okay, any other issues anybody wants to raise? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support?
Support.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much, folks.